Sounds like got a pass to the ones not I'm gonna read. Maybe tired. Okay. Awake my heart. Jesus and Jim. I will be with him in trouble. Psalm 91:15. So then trouble is permitted, even in the godliest lives, but our Lord pledges his companionship in it. Thus trouble is transformed, our extremity becomes his opportunity. Amid our trial, he comes closest to us and whispers his choicest secrets. His presence paints a rainbow over every weeping sky and shoots a golden sun shaft through every storm cloud. Remember, however, that the promise, I will be with him in trouble, is given only to the really godly heart, not to the superficial off and on or now and then believer who lapses into willful backslidings when things are going well and only flies to God as a panic resort in times of emergency. Our Lord is often very merciful to such fickle pilgrims, but they never taste that sweet companionship of Christ, which makes every trouble a shining ladder up to heaven. As the first verse of our psalm makes clear, the one to whom this promise of the divine presence belongs is he that dwelleth or habitually abideth in the secret place of the Most High. The man or woman whose sustained response to God is that of true faith and reverent love, of humble heart and sincere desire to please him, of regular daily prayer and daily reliance upon him. Some time ago, in a southern English town, the clergyman of an Anglican church happened to be looking out through his vicarage window when he saw a rather rough-looking workman stroll past to the main door of the church, where he halted rather furtively, and then entered the next day. The clergyman noticed the same thing, and again a couple of days later, always about the same time, 12:30 noon, his suspicions became aroused. So he set the verger to spy. This is what the verger saw. The man entered, stuffed his cap into his pocket, and walked down the main aisle to the rail before the communion table. There, with bowed head, he stood in silence, then putting his hands on the communion rail and looking over towards the communion table, he said in a low voice, "Jesus, it's Jim." Some days later, there was a nasty accident in town, and Jim was carried to the local hospital. He was put in a men's ward, which at that time was filled with the roughest mixture of men ever admitted. Such was their coarseness and crude ungratefulness that more than one of the nurses had shed tears. However, after Jim had been there for a few days, there was a marked change, and after 2 or 3 days more, it was such that the sister and nurses simply could not conceal their happy surprise. One morning, just as the sister entered to start her round of the beds, the men were all enjoying a good-natured laugh at something. She could not help asking the first man what it was which had made such a change in them all. He replied, "Oh, it's that chap in the 5th bed. They call I'm Jim." So when the screen was round Jim's bed, she said to him, "Jim, you with a tear glistening in his eyes." Jim replied, "Jim, you've made a wonderful change in this ward. Tell me how you've done it." With a tear glistening in his eyes, Jim replied, "Well, sister, I'm not sure you'd understand if I told you, but somehow, every day, just about 12:30, I see Jesus coming toward the end of my bed. He stands there for a minute. Then he just puts his hand on the bed rail and leans over and says, 'Jim, it's Jesus.'